This video is about the concept of governance and its connection with systems thinking in practice and cybernetics. Ray Ison is one of the respected systems thinking researchers out there and wrote about this in his article titled Governing in the Anthropocene, What Future Systems Thinking in Practice, which was published in 2016 with the journal Systems Research and Behavioral Science, which I highly recommend reading because it is an excellent piece of writing, of thinking that he's done, and you can find it online using the full reference that I've included on this slide. So Ison argued that, unfortunately, the term governing is often viewed as synonymous with controlling or control as a form of external power over. Instead of this misunderstanding, we need to reframe governance to someone or a collective constantly assimilating and responding to feedback and gaining control through self-regulation and self-organization. So instead of thinking about governing and as something to control or controlling as a form of external power over, we need to reframe it into someone or a collection of people constantly assimilating and responding to feedback and gaining control that way. This is based on the systems thinking if you are using systems thinking in practice. And you could see here I've included, I've put on this slide the example of how governance is seen outside of the systems thinking lens as power over versus if you are thinking about it and if you want to reframe it within the cybernetics and systems thinking in practice, how they both differ, which is a big difference. To help make his framing of what governing is clear, Ison used the example that you could see on this slide of the steering done by a helmsperson who, despite being positioned using wires and ropes, keeps their hand on the rudder or tiller, as you could see in this photo. So if you take the metaphor that Ison used to describe governance or governing based on steering by a helmsperson, as I showed in the previous example, it can reveal things differently than if we thought of governance as control or power over, as he suggested. So what does that mean? What do we mean by that if we want to interpret governance as steering a boat? This reveals a few things. That through the agency of a helmsperson or a steerman, with all the personal, the cultural, and evolutionary history, it is possible to steer the boat through integrating it because of social feedback. So through interpretations of the purpose that you're doing, the reactions of the crew members. And also through biophysical feedback, like, what surrounds the boat, which is wind, currents, and weather. And also how the act of sailing arises in relational terms, in which as he called it, Ison, the social biophysical relationship is mediated by technology. A boat with certain design features or by institutions which brings with them norms, rules of the game, such as the rules of a sailing race in this case, if we use the scenario of a boat. That also sailing is always socially embedded and mostly done with others, with other people. Where there is a crew, it involves co-building and enacting an effective sailing performance. Just as every explanation has an explainer, every act of sailing has a sailor. And finally, from a meta perspective, it is possible, Ison thinks, to understand sailing as a form of practice or the act of practicing that enacts particular set of, systemic relational dynamics. And from this perspective, it is possible to say it was done well or not, it had certain qualities, and so on. Okay. how does this relate to our existing governance situation, say? And you have to bear in mind that he wrote this article not at this time, but before, a few years ago. But maybe this still applies given our situation. So from that, Ison asserted that what we experience in most parts of the world as governments is theoretically and practically inadequate in connection to the metaphor of steering and its use to transform our lives through governing. He also argued that us humans live in a flawed mainstream governance diamond style, which operates across democracies and authoritarian and centralized nations. This is why Ison sees the need to reframe governance to account for systemic relational dynamic that his metaphor of steering, a boat can reveal. So Ison suggested changing our existing governance diamond way of operation, which consists of one-dimensional set of relationships between the state and its bureaucratic practices, between civil society, the private sector, including the media, and the judiciary and institutions that enact laws into a different framing. So this is, as you can see on the left-hand side. So he suggests changing this existing governance diamond way of operating, which he sees that dominates governance thinking and doing at the moment, or at that time when he wrote the article. So he sees this as we need to change into a different framing, one that is three-dimensional, which demand critical understanding of our purpose as a society and our relation with the biophysical world. He reframed our governance in relation to how he sees the way we need to govern under the Anthropocene. And you can see this way of thinking and reframing is included on the right and depicted on the right-hand side. So hopefully this video gave you an idea about governance and systems thinking practice based on how Ison saw this in relation to how we think about the Anthropocene.